Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm David Rose, and tonight we are shining the spotlight on some people, places, and things you might have missed but need to know about in the never-ending parade of headlines, web stories, and yes, even newscasts focused on fentanyl. Lost in the shuffle of all that bloodshed, arrests, and seizures are the faces of people experiencing heartbreak and speaking plainly about the scope of this crisis. With fentanyl and meth equally stalking victims on the streets, we also found help, hope, and maybe even a miracle cure. We'll start with a brief comment made by Senate candidate Tiffany Smiley. She included it in her election night speech as one of many examples of the powerful connection she made on the campaign trail. It was just a few seconds long, but it touched on years of pain.
You know, I'll never forget just the mom who grabbed me in a crowd and said, I lost two of my boys this summer to fentanyl. Keep fighting. Please keep fighting.
Here on the Spotlight, we know that mom very well, and her story is so much more than that mentioned in a political stump speech.
Oh my God, Bear. Oh my God.
Heartbreaking video of the moment Brenda West Bresnahan was reunited with her missing son's dog.
Hi, Bear. Where's your daddy? Where's your daddy at?
Trevor Bresnahan had taken Bear with him when he left the Seattle area to go visit a friend in Stevens County last August. Brenda reported them missing when he didn't come to her home in Ording as planned.
He was in the road, his tongue was hanging out.
A homeowner had found Bear running around alone.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
A few days later, detectives found Trevor's clothing and other items at the summit of Springdale Hunters Road. Not long after, a property owner discovered the 42-year-old's body, and deputies located his car nearby. Detectives are now investigating Trevor's case as a homicide. They believe it was drug-related and are waiting on results from the crime lab. Based on the evidence so far, they think whoever was involved has ties to Western Washington.
I look at Bear and I just think, man, I wish you could talk. I wish I could call Trevor and ask him what happened, but I can't.
Brenda is holding on to the memories of Trevor volunteering in church and working for DNR to put out fires. He had past issues with addiction and the law, but was trying to put them behind him. He'd been in a rehab program and working as a peer support counselor in Kent when he disappeared.
The day he left was the day he graduated. He had told everyone there, I'll be back in a week, because he had his housing there.
His mom thinks the pull of addiction was just too strong and Trevor relapsed. Detectives are still waiting on toxicology results, and they haven't released his cause of death yet.
I wake up and you know, immediately the first thought that comes to my mind is, my boys are dead, you know. They both died, I'm assuming Trevor did, because of drugs.
Trevor was the second son Brenda lost this year. In March, Tyler Bresnahan overdosed on fentanyl in Bonnie Lake. Brenda raced there when she got the call.
I thought he was in the ambulance, but he wasn't. And they said, well, he's around the corner inside of his truck and he's waiting for the coroner.
Tyler's truck had been running for 4 hours. Brenda says there was no consoling her until a chaplain finally intervened.
And he actually had to put his hands on my face and whisper and say, Brenda, your son is gone. His body is cold and he's not coming back. He's passed away.
Now she's turning her grief into action.
I wrote a couple things down and
Oh, there's Bear.
yeah.
Oh, hi, Bear. Yeah.
He wants to play ball.
Brenda is hoping to meet with state legislators to push them to make felony drug possession illegal again. Right now, police can only refer people to treatment. Brenda believes jail is the best place for addicts to start the process of getting clean and wants fully funded treatment programs.
It's time the legislature stand up for families and victims of crime. And I'm not the only one suffering from the new drug laws and crime laws. And I felt like they needed to stop legalizing more drugs and letting people go.
She doesn't want another mom to suffer the emptiness she feels right now. Brenda is asking anyone with information about Trevor's death to contact the Stevens County Sheriff's Office.
I want people to realize that how would you like it if this was your son or your uncle or your brother or your father? You would want to know. So give some information. If you know, just give some information anonymously.
15 minutes of fame. That's what we're all promised, or so the Andy Warhol saying goes. For many these days, their big on-screen break involves breaking the law. We could fill an hour-long show with security camera clips of drug-fueled crimes committed in our state. But instead of asking, have you seen this person? Tonight we're asking, do you really know this person and the depths of their addiction that often end in prison or worse? This is video of 31-year-old Tess Babauta walking into a Pierce County courtroom on November 8th.
You understand you're pleading guilty to robbery in the first degree, which is a felony offense and also considered a strike offense in the state of Washington.
Yes, Your Honor.
It comes just over 10 months after surveillance video showed her in a mask and gloves walking into the Metro PCS store in Body Lake. She put a note on the counter, pulled out a gun, and demanded money.
Okay.
She got away with about $1,000.
This time, how do you plead to the charge of robbery in the first degree?
Guilty.
That admission comes after she was identified by your tips to Crime Stoppers of Tacoma Pierce County. A Bonnie Lake police detective on the Puget Sound Auto Theft Task Force tracked her down and arrested her. During questioning, Babauta told him she committed the robbery to feed her fentanyl habit.
And I find that there is probable cause to justify filing the case against you.
At her first appearance in court, she caught a break. Since Babauta had no criminal history, Commissioner Craig Adams set her bail at just $5,000 and ordered her to wear an electronic tracker if released. Still, she balked.
My mom, she posted my bail last time, and I'm just seeing if I can just go out on the last bail, because we really don't have that much money, and I can just be released on the electronic home monitoring. I know I can make it to court because I'll be on home monitoring.
I have issued my order. I don't change my order. I don't bargain with myself.
Okay.
After posting bail, Babauta was released. But then detectives say the court learned she was having a friend deliver fentanyl pills to the house where she was staying. Her bail was revoked and she was sent back to jail. At her plea hearing, she listened as Judge James Orlando listed the details of her crime.
I displayed what appeared to be a firearm when I demanded money from a clerk at a Metro PCS store, displaying what appeared to be a gun and taking money from the store. Is that all true?
Yes, Your Honor.
She's not headed to prison yet. Babauta will be sentenced in early January, but still has to testify in the trial of her accused getaway driver. She's agreed to a sentence of between 41 and 54 months in prison. Up next, straight talk about the economics of our unquenchable addiction and a wake-up call from a unique bedroom community. This fentanyl crisis is sucking the soul from our community, but it's also entangling innocent bystanders whose simple mistakes enable even more drug dealing and addiction. Take, for example, this announcement from the Puget Sound Auto Theft Task Force. Buried in the list of recovered vehicles, the story of thieves who stole an unattended truck in northeast Tacoma. The 79-year-old owner left it running to go back inside to get his grocery list. The truck was tracked down days later and miles later in Fife, with a big bag of blues right in the center console. Police tell us the stolen vehicle was only a means to an end.
It just puts a lot of people in danger. These guys are, majority of the time, they're stealing cars. They're stealing cars to go commit their crimes so they can get money to go buy fentanyl. And it's just a repetitive cycles.
Police and the social workers embedded with them tell us that addicts are smoking 30 to 50 pills a day. Users need larger and larger doses to get high. Eventually, their brain shuts off and it stops telling their body to breathe, so they suffocate. And despite the physical danger, the next dose is never far away these days.
The prevalence and the availability of it is much higher because you don't even have to be sneaky with it anymore. People are using drugs in parking lots, passing out and slumping over the wheel.
That kind of demand has led to a huge influx of supply, like the massive seizure of drugs and guns reported by Seattle police and federal agents last month. In this bust alone, they recovered enough fentanyl to kill more than 100,000 people. Those dirty oxys only cost the cartels pennies to produce, using precursor drugs shipped to Mexico from China and India, and then smuggled across our southern border. There's so much product on the streets now that prices are plummeting from $10 a pill earlier this year to a couple of bucks a pill today. In economic terms, this is a buyer's market, with the abundance of pills making addiction affordable for anyone. And Seattle Police Chief Adrian Diaz says that is driving even more crime.
When you're stealing, you're not just stealing $30, $45 worth of stuff. You're stealing $100 worth of stuff to be able to keep your supply, to keep your habit going, to feed your habit. And so think about all of what we've seen when it comes to burglary and car prowls and all of the increase that we've seen over the last couple of years. There are a lot of discussions about immigration, a lot of discussions about border security, but at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we address the prevention side, that we really try to make sure that people aren't driving to fentanyl as a way to mask, whatever issue that they might be having. So I think that we really have to focus on our prevention side and really see it as a public health crisis.
That said, who's going to come up with a solution to this health crisis? You're probably familiar with all the committees, study groups, and expert panels asking endless questions about the problem. But Spotlight video journalist Clint Edwards shows us that not everyone is willing to wait for their official answer, especially those like Mike Kersey at Courage to Change Recovery Services in Everett, who knows the depths of addiction firsthand.
Welcome Community Detox.
Hi, hey, this is Mike Kersey. Hey, do you guys have any male beds available? Yeah. I've got 23 years clean and sober myself. And so I just, people found out that I had rooms for rent and needed help. And so that's kind of how it all evolved.
16 beds is what we have really available. We might have one bed available or two here and there, because it's best for people to move on when they get a job, when they get their life back, when they start rebuilding.
Heroin was initially a 7-day detox. And now with fentanyl being a synthetic opiate, along with some of the other drugs out there that are synthetics, it takes a lot longer to detox from. What would be a 7-day detox is now turned into, it really takes 18 months because the synthetics go to the bone marrow and it just takes that much longer for them to detox. So I see in and out, relapse after relapse, and getting them in and out of detox over and over and over again.
Christina Anderson, and I'm the Vice President of Courage to Change Recovery Services. We're one of the few organizations that do allow medically assisted treatment, but we also make sure that they stay clean and sober otherwise.
Bedroom, we have bunk beds in all the bedrooms to make it, have plenty of space and stuff.
Alyssa Long,
Secretary.
I guess I'm more of your traditional suburban housewife where most people wouldn't expect you to be struggling with addiction. I had been using things with fentanyl. I actually started using fentanyl without realizing it when pain clinics shut down and stopped giving prescriptions out to people that had real physical injuries. It caused a lot of people to go to the streets and hit the streets for medications. And even though it's a really unsafe thing to do when you're dependent, maybe not necessarily addicted, but dependent on opiates, you're not able to just stop. And so that was a real struggle, and people didn't realize fentanyl was in everything. I didn't realize it first.
Hey, this is Mike. Hey, I just sent you the phone number for Whatcom Detox. Okay, so do you have a ride, or are you gonna need me to come pick you up? The fentanyl is powder form, and then they make it into pills. And then the methamphetamines, they make that right here or wherever. And it's cooked in bathtubs with some pretty crazy chemicals. Like the latest one I heard was them using oven cleaner, and so if you can imagine putting oven cleaner in your body and what that might do to you.
We're kind of a small, boots on ground type of organization, so we don't get a lot of funding. We're basically private funded, and we don't get grants as often as we should to support the community that we show up for every single day. And so it's been really difficult to find the funding to keep the program going. The results are there, and the results speak for themselves, and we really need to work on getting more grants and funding to organizations such as this.
Snohomish County has a long and deadly history with opioids, from heroin to fentanyl. This summer, overdoses there spiked almost 300%. But medication-assisted treatment can slash the risk of opioid overdose in half. And that's why the Tulalip Tribe hopes to open a methadone clinic this month. The Spotlight's Steve Kiggin says it will be large enough to treat 150 people and open to everyone, not just tribal members.
The landscaping nearly complete.
Except for some odds and ends inside, this facility tucked behind Kilseda Creek Casino is all but ready for patients.
Like most communities that are struggling through this fentanyl opioid epidemic, you're in anguish, and there's no other word to describe it. Tulalip Tribe Vice Chair Misty Napiahi says her community, like so many others, has been plagued by opioids and overdose. What began as a crisis with heroin years ago, then moved to prescription pills. Today, it's illicit fentanyl. Napiahi says no community is safe, but job openings for a clinical administrator and medical director have gone unfilled for 9 months. She believes it's due to labor shortages. Only after those positions are filled can they start this clinic. Napiahi says those hires can't come soon enough. We just recently buried a 22-year-old on his 22nd birthday from a drug overdose, and to watch the loss in the community, how it makes us all real. It makes you question what you're doing, question what we're doing with an entire generation. That's being lost across the country. This is not an isolated issue. The clinic plans to treat patients using methadone. The drug reduces or eliminates withdrawal symptoms, keeps opioid users from getting high, and cuts their cravings. Dosing rooms like these is where patients undergo medically supervised withdrawal and maintenance. At first, they'll have to return daily for treatment. The clinic also offers case managers and use disorder counselors on site. Abiyahi says they must care for the person and their disease. Coming out of this addiction, right, it's like climbing Mount Everest with no tools. And so we have to give them the ice pick and teach them to not look at the whole mountain, just look at where you're at right now. Eventually, she says the clinic could offer dental services and expand the number of patients it can serve. It's a place Napiahi dreams patients can find what's been missing for too long. A reason for hope and a life with purpose. But there's a whole nother population of young people who are orphaned because of this epidemic, who don't only have one parent at home now, or that they've lost that parent to drugs too. I mean, this is something that's happening in our community. And really the only tool we have left is to educate them that you've lost your parents to this. You don't have to go down this road.
Still to come, see how a new proposed program could sweeten the deal for people who are trying to kick the habit. Where there's fentanyl, you will find meth. The combination of meth and opioids has become increasingly common, with over half of meth overdoses in Washington now including an opioid of some sort. We're spending millions on police and treatment programs to combat this trend. But can we actually buy our way out of addiction? The Spotlight's Alejandra Guzman says a new initiative aims to try to find out.
It's a public health crisis in the sense of how many people are dying.
Currently, there is no treatment for methamphetamine use, which not only affects physical and mental health, but it can cost you your life. Take a look at the data. According to the King County Fatal Overdose Dashboard, deaths from the drug jumped up from 98 in 2016 to 365 in 2021, a trend that doesn't seem to be slowing. So far this year, 318 people have died from an overdose.
And so that's a lot of folks to be losing. And again, it affects also parts of our community disproportionately.
For Black people, there was a 244% increase in deaths, 233% for American Indians, and 115% for white people. Dr. Michael McDonald, who spent the last 30 years researching substance use and mental health, helped shape this report requested by Seattle City Council members Andrew Lewis and Lisa Herbold. He says meth use also has a negative impact on society.
We need new solutions. We need more of what we know works for other drugs like opioids.
Here's how the program they're proposing would work. Over the course of 12 weeks, a person checks in with their practitioner twice a week, submits a urine sample, and each time they're clean, they get a reward, on average up to $300 over the course of treatment.
We want to get people into care. We want to support them. We want to reward their recovery.
Dr. McDonald says getting people in recovery will help decrease crime, improve the homelessness issue, and decrease hospital costs, which have already increased significantly.
So people who use methamphetamine are more likely to be enrolled in Medicaid eligible, not be insured, or have some other public insurance.
Costs covered by you, the taxpayer. Dr. McDonald says this is an investment. As experts urge city, county, and state leaders to act with urgency, researchers are already looking at how this program can be brought closer to home, encampments, tiny villages, and supported housing.
And it's a portable intervention that we could literally take out to to people in the community.
Fox 13 reached out to Mayor Harrell's office asking if any funding could be approved for this treatment and what his office is doing to curb meth use. His office said they're looking at solutions, including contingency management.
When the spotlight continues, could there be an antidote for addiction? An ER in Everett is running tests right now that show a lot of promise. We'll end the show on a high note, a new way to stop people from chasing after their next hit of meth. This treatment has shown so much promise, it's not hyperbole to call it a miracle. And it's being tested in the ER of Providence, Everett. The Spotlight's Jennifer Dowling says the city was chosen because it is a hotspot for meth use.
The ER at Providence serves as a type of safety net for the community, a place where doctors like Tom Roby regularly encounter people struggling with addiction.
There's not a day in the emergency department where we're not treating somebody on methamphetamine.
At Providence, he's helping to facilitate a study on a new treatment for meth addiction. Doctors are recruiting 40 people nationally, including several from the Everett area, as part of a national effort to get the drug approved by the FDA.
The sponsors identified hotspots around the country where methamphetamine use is particularly challenging, and Everett is one of those places.
Dr. Roby says the treatment works by using monoclonal antibodies, which have already been tapped for a range of medical purposes, including the treatment of COVID.
It's like the COVID antibodies you've heard about that bind the COVID molecule and COVID virus, and or bind the spike protein on the COVID virus and dismantle it.
The antibody is very specific for any type of amphetamine. Here's what it looks like in action, with the nerve endings in your brain represented in blue. The antibody shown here as a Y in the graphic.
So once it's injected into the blood, it circulates and binds that amphetamine so tightly that it pulls it away from the brain and moves it to the other organs that can help clear it out of the system.
Translation, the meth gets flushed out of your body naturally, but after that,
So it keeps the patient from getting high.
once the antibodies are in the blood, given through an IV line, it remains in the bloodstream for almost a month and essentially pulls meth to it like a magnet and binds it.
It doesn't take away all of the effects of the meth, but what it does is it helps stabilize your thinking. It helps stabilize your life such that you can maybe go out and get your ID. Maybe you can get your housing voucher.
So far, Dr. Roby says in the early stages of the study, the medication has been almost as effective as some of the antipsychotic medicines that are used to treat psychosis and hallucinations, paranoia, and anxiety. Roby says he was skeptical about the treatments at first because there isn't anything out there to treat meth currently. But after seeing the positive impacts on his study participants, he changed his mind.
In many cases, within 30 minutes or an hour of them coming in, receiving the treatment, they'll be resting, maybe even napping. That's how calm people get after receiving this drug.
Dr. Roby also hopes that Everett can lead the way in providing groundbreaking treatments like this to folks that might not have access to it otherwise.
What has kept me really excited about this project is that the patients who receive this agent are coming back telling me that their lives are changed. They've gotten housing, they've got a job, they've reconnected with family members. These are the things that make it a joy.
Dr. Roby says Sacred Heart in Spokane is also part of the study. He says it could take 4 to 6 years for the drug to get final approval for wide-scale use, but he's hopeful that it will one day be a part of a comprehensive approach to tackling meth addiction. That's all the time we have on this edition of The Spotlight. Until next time, be smart and stay safe.